Christos Anesti. Christ is risen. Christos Voskrese. That's pretty good. Siga, siga. You're learning slowly. How many have been to Lida? How many have been to Joppa? You need to go. Not right now. You need to go visit in Israel, the city of Joppa and Lida. They're on the coast. And you need to go there to visit this place because this is where this miracle in the epistle reading, the Acts of the Apostles, takes place. It is also where one of the great saints of the church, one of the great martyr saints of the church, is buried, and where his mother was born. Does anyone know who that saint is? No. St. George, the great martyr. His mother was from Lida, Joppa. And there is a monastery there, very small convent and monastery. And in this church that is built right next to a mosque, and there's a wall that separates the church from the mosque, this is the church of St. George. And you go down underneath where the altar is, and there is where he was buried. And there is myrrh that has come from the tomb of St. George. His mother was from this place. She was a Palestinian woman, and she married a general of the Roman Empire, of the army. And when St. George's father died in battle, she had to return back to Joppa. She could not remain there. She had to return back to the place of her birth, and there is where she raised her son, and her son then becomes a great general in the Roman Empire as well, in the Roman army. But it is there that he also accepts Christianity as a soldier and is willing to give his life because of his faith in Jesus Christ, a faith that his mother passed on to him. I think about this today in light of the gospel passage where there's a man who is 38 years ill, and he is by the pool of Bethesda. And if you go to Jerusalem, you can go and visit this area. There is still water there. It's a very, very complex development there as they have excavated the area of Bethesda. And you see how there was a church built there, and how all of these arches, you can imagine what this place was like during the time of this miracle. Where Christ visits this place, it is known to be a place of healing, and it is believed that an angel of the Lord will at certain times go down and to stir the water up, and anyone who stepped into the water at that time would be healed. And so this man of 38 years is there. I can only imagine what it's like to be there for 38 years. And Christ asks him a very odd question. Do you want to be healed? Do you want to be made well? What has prevented you from going into the water to be healed? If you are here 38 years, what has prevented you? And he says to the Lord, Sir, I have no man. I have no one to take me into the water. And as I am going, I can only imagine what this is like, crawling to the water and trying to get into the water, and how many other people go before him. And so this effort, I can imagine this effort of this man, ill these many years, trying to get into the water, having no one to care about him at all, and he is not able to get in to be healed. But Christ shows up this day and confronts this man about his illness and about his faith. And then heals him on the spot. Because the Lord heard not just the fact that he had no one, but the fact that he made an effort. As I go down to the water, someone comes before me. Someone goes in before me. There is effort. The Lord hears the effort of this man who has no one. Now, there are times that I have preached about this gospel and said, how do you, after 38 years, have no one to help you? As I get older, I come to understand a little bit better how it is that some people have no one. Because when I go into a convalescent hospital, or I go into a home where someone is homebound, and they have either no one or very few people who even call them, let alone knock on their door. And their relatives don't live anywhere near them. So I begin to understand how it's possible that people can have no one to really think or care about what happens to them. Now, it may be true that this man has alienated everybody in his life. He's not only alienated them, but any particular friend that he has had has turned away from him. But he has a conversation with Jesus that is very important. It's the same kind of conversation that Zacchaeus has with Christ when Christ goes to Jericho and Zacchaeus is up in a tree. It's the same kind of conversation that the Lord has with the Samaritan woman at the fountain, at the well of Jacob. These conversations become very significant for these people, because in every single one of these conversations with these people looking, as I preached about last week, looking for the kingdom of God, the kingdom of God presents them himself to them. Christ is the kingdom. And so when he has a conversation with them, their life is turned around, just like our lives have been changed because of our faith, because Christ is real in our life. That is why we celebrate his glorious resurrection. We sing Christos Anesti for 40 days. We greet each other with Christ is risen, truly he is risen. So which one of us here could say, I have no one? I pray no one. We all have someone that we can count on. We all have someone that we can turn to. We all have someone who would help us when we are in need. And therefore we are blessed. We are blessed. The mother of St. George went back to Joppa, Lydda. She was the wife of a great general, and she goes back to live in this very small town to raise her son, George, who then grows up and becomes also a soldier and a great general, but even a greater witness to Christ and his message. Not only do Christians believe greatly in St. George, the great martyr, but those who are not Christian. Many of the Muslim faith consider St. George to be a very special person for them, a saint for them, a miraculous person for them. And they also go and they visit this church, and they honor the memory. St. George is remembered not by Christians, but also by Jews and by Muslims. He had a great effect on the people of this area, even to this very day. This church is well respected, and it is cared for not only by Orthodox Christians, but how many of the holy places are taken care of by Muslim families? Because little by little, many of the Orthodox Christians because of obvious reasons, are leaving this area of the world. And they're coming to a place that is safer. But in leaving these places, they leave these holy places supposedly unattended. Witnesses to great miracles, places where Christ encountered man looking for the kingdom of God. Let us not take for granted these conversations. Let not take for granted the opportunity that we have to speak with the Lord and to share our faith with one another and to really believe that we have someone. We are not like the paralytic this morning that has no one. However, we are like the paralytic in some other ways, because sometimes we become a little paralyzed to reach out and to help. Sometimes the paralysis is an emotional paralysis that keeps us from moving forward. Sometimes the paralysis is an intellectual paralysis that does not want to believe in certain things because we don't have proof. Sometimes the paralysis is spiritual. Our faith only goes so far, and then doubt begins to seep in. Let us remember the conversation this morning. I have no one. And when I try to go down into the water, someone goes ahead of me. And that is all the Lord needed to hear, to then tell the paralytic, rise, take up your pallet, and walk. There were many who criticized the paralytic. What are you doing on the Sabbath day? Carrying something, working, moving. The man who healed me told me to do this. And who is it that healed you and told you to do this? I don't know. But how beautiful that the Lord would then meet him again and look for him and find him in the temple and tell him, see, you are well. Sin no more, that nothing worse befall you. Conversations with God are very important. No matter how short, no matter how quiet, no matter how secret they may be, conversations with God, even in a place like this, amongst fellow believers, can change a life, can change our lives.